One of the most iconic JDM cars of all time
Here's a mirror.
is now here in the building. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nissan FairladyZ S30 Datsun 240Z. It's been a pretty incredible journey to actually get it all the way from the shores of Japan to Australia.
But it's here.
It is actually here in the metal, so you'd say,
In the very
flesh.
curvy, attractive looking metal.
And today, we get working on this thing to turn it into, it was the ultimate JDM icon, and now it's the
Quintessential JDM. What does that mean?
it means it's the super ultimate JDM icon of automotive phantasmagron.
You love it, I can tell.
Let's get to it.
You may remember that not that long ago, we went over to Japan and we went down to Matsusaka, where this was waiting for us in someone's back shed. And the door came up and there was our Mad 240Z. It's better than I could have imagined.
In Japan, this car is known as a Nissan FairladyZ S30, but most people broadly refer to these internationally as a 240Z. Ours is almost 40 years old, but you'd never know driving it. The condition is remarkable. As soon as we picked it up, we gave it a quick service and then put it on the back of a truck and drove to Suzuka Twin so we could put it through its paces. It was here that it became abundantly clear why this car has such a cult following around the world as one of the most iconic JDM cars that money can buy. The drive, the look, the feel, and the intangible qualities, it all starts to make sense as to why some examples of these can cost up to $100,000. After some time on the track, we brought the car back to Import Monster in Matsusaka. It's from here that the car's prepared for shipment back to Australia. And now it's arrived and we are crazy excited to get working on it. It's actually a really surreal process to buy something like this off the internet, then drive it overseas, and then later on it just arrives in your country. It's actually crazy, but now we've got a lot of work to do.
We knew what we were getting ourselves into, but we didn't know how good it was until we saw it in the flesh. And it's made it to Australia.
And it is one of those gambles that we took, because we bought this without seeing anything in real life. We saw a few photos, maybe 6 photos or something, and we just sent the money over and went, yes, we'll take it. So seeing it for the first time, man, it was epic.
This is modified. I mean, subtly modified, I guess. Like, it's not a total stocker, which I like. I think it looks great. The curvy windscreen is unlike anything I've ever seen before. Like, it starts here, goes all the way out to there, and then curves back in again.
It's amazing.
It's just so clean. It's got a little bit of dust on it from being on a truck, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just arrived a few minutes ago, which was super exciting.
You are home now. You're home now.
Welcome to Australia.
You're probably wondering, what are we going to do to it? What do you do to a car that is just, it's already complete? And well, it's a very good question, isn't it,
And you've already used up all the barriers in Australia.
Yes, imagine that. You'd never do it. Nah. Anyway, you might be asking, what are we going to do to it? That's a very good question. Come with me and I'm going to show you. So the car handles really well.
Yeah, it does.
And it brakes well. So the first thing that we're talking here, people, is engine mods. So let's have a quick chat about that first. So.
Oh, something missing.
What do you mean?
There's something missing, dude.
We're not allowed to have that engine.
We're not.
That's, like, you know, our dreams of this kind of like all original car and our L20 mods, they went out the window. Now, where is the engine, you might be asking? Well, we couldn't bring the car in with that engine in it, in any kind of time frame or financial system that would make any sense. So,
and it's because of housing materials.
Yeah, in Australia we have this asbestos policy, and if there's any asbestos, you can bring the car in with the engine, but then it has to be tested. If there is asbestos in it, there can be fines. It can end up costing potentially tens of thousands of dollars because of head gaskets, clutches, all sorts of different things. In Japan, it was just decided that if we want to actually get this car to Australia in any kind of timely fashion, all that stuff just had to go. And so it's got no engine, there's no gearbox.
No exhaust.
There's no brakes.
No clutch. Anything that could have asbestos in it. And I mean, their rule's funny too, isn't it? Because it's like, in Japan, zero asbestos is 1%. In Australia, zero asbestos is 0%, and it's that risk of 1% that means you can get fined if you bring something in. Even if it's accidentally, it's like, too bad, mate.
So it left us in a bit of a kind of wacky state because we bought the car complete, and if we knew that we wouldn't be able to get it in with the engine, we probably could have bought something different. But I feel slack saying that now because the car is listening.
Luckily, it's still a very attractive rolling shell.
It is an attractive rolling shell, but it begs the question then, what do you put in here? And there is only one real option, isn't there?
Yeah,
really?
you know it. Everyone knows it.
Everyone knows it.
Everyone knows
they've
the
seen
option.
it in the background
They've
of our
been seeing
videos
it
for a while
ages.
now. Here it is. So this is an engine from a GTR. And this here is going to be modified and converted to run inside our S30 here. So that's the plan. That's about all there is to say about it. Now, of course, it's going to be turbocharged, it's going to be fast, it's going to make bulk power. And as such, Martin, and with things like this that we really care about, unlike some other vehicles that we've had, it's time to bring in some experts, Martin, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And who are those experts, Martin?
Well, some of our very good mates.
So
It's good having mates that know how to do cool car stuff, isn't it?
It is. So helping us do this project, we're going to have Mechanical Stig. We're also going to have Turbo Yoda, who I think is hiding just outside the door. I think so. Look who's here, everyone.
Hey!
Yay!
Hi, Dr. Nick.
Hey, Benny.
Hi.
We're just talking about you, mate.
Oh, cool.
We're putting a GTR engine in the S30.
Oh, cool. Really?
Is that a good idea, Benny?
When are we doing it?
Now. So there it is. That's our plan. It's going to be a 240Z with an RB26 in it. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be so good, man. That thing, which is just like, I can't think of a better spot for that engine to be in except maybe a GTR.
It's the only option, Martin.
Yeah.
That there, we are going to make it rear-wheel drive. That there is the best and only option for this car.
Nissan Fairlady, Nissan RB26. It's like it's meant to be.
The only better option is the options that you're reading right now in the YouTube comments.
The RB26 is one of Nissan's most famous engines. It powered GTR Skylines from '89 to 2002. It's got 6 cylinders, an iron block, alloy heads with individual throttle bodies fed by parallel twin turbochargers. The Japanese Gentleman's Agreement limited its power to just over 200 kilowatts, but it's not uncommon for modified versions to make 2, 3 or even 4 times that power figure.
Do you want to get in?
No, thanks. This is a sump from an RD28 Patrol, and I do believe that the Yoda has suggested that we modify the bottom of it by chopping it off at the seam there and then using that because we're only going rear-wheel drive and can't use that.
That looks old, Alan.
Yeah, it is old. It's from 1998 or something like that.
That's 20 years ago. Hey, RD and RB, are they the same but different?
Yeah, an RD is like a diesel version of an RB engine, so they did put them in taxis and that sort of thing
Taxis?
Really?
in Japan. But in Australia, we had them in patrols. It was kind of like the base engine that could almost get up a hill in a patrol.
So RD, D stands for diesel, and RB, the B stands for petrol.
Boost. No, I bet you it stands for benzene or something.
I've spent hours at night thinking about why that. Yeah, the RD makes sense, but the RB doesn't, does it?
Our first step is to jack up the car, clear out the engine bay of anything that we no longer need, and investigate how to fit our gearbox, which we don't have yet.
I'm just having a general look under here just to familiarise where the gearbox mount and that sort of thing is. It's kind of like in the tunnel, so that may have to come out because this box that we're using is probably twice the size of the one that was in it.
Yeah.
So we might have to just unpick those brackets there and put them back here a bit further, which is no problem.
We're going to need to put the engine in and out a bunch of times during this build, so we're removing the front end of the car. We're not using a conversion kit for this build. Instead, we'll be fabricating all the mounts ourselves to make sure they fit our car perfectly. We're taking extra care while removing these parts because with a car that's this old, replacing them won't be easy. And then in my excitement, I almost dropped our front lip.
A couple of interesting things in this engine bay. Well, that's not interesting because that's a coil and we don't need it anymore. That's a resistor, is it?
Ballast resistor.
Ballast resistor. Got a big spring thing in it. But that is the one that's got me interested.
Bring on the party, Martin.
What is it?
That's your Ibiza light.
What do you mean?
That's your Ibiza light.
What's that mean?
Ibiza, it's like a party place.
Yeah.
That's the Ibiza light.
Why?
You tell him.
Is it not obvious?
No.
It's the Ibiza light, man.
What do you mean?
Hashtag Ibiza light.
What's that mean? Is that actually a courtesy light for tuning your carbies?
Yeah, that's what a Ibiza light means.
Ibiza light, dude. What did you say this was called?
Ballast resistor.
What's that called?
Ibiza light.
Exactly.
With the front end gone, we can get rid of any parts that we no longer need or parts that'll be upgraded and replaced later.
The chassis rail appears to have some rust from a leaking brake master cylinder. We'll have to clean that up and replace the master cylinder once we can get the brake lines out. By the time you've got your hands on a pair of multi-grips, you know it's really seized and we'll probably just have to cut these lines out and remake them later.
Well, we're not trying to make a show car. This car is already in pretty amazing condition considering how old it is, but over here we have had a bit of a leak, which means there's been brake fluid coming down here and caused a bit of rust along here. So
The back of the master cylinder has little O-rings in them, and those O-rings perish over time, and they just start to drip, and you don't notice at first because it's buried.
Yep.
And sooner or later, it looks like a waterfall's come out of it, and anything that's touched. That's why you don't leave brake fluid on your paint.
yeah, and you have a look between these two different sides. Have a look at this side over here, where there's been no brake fluid on it.
Tiny bit of corrosion, not much.
And then have a look at that side and look at the difference. So we've just treated that with an anti-rust, and now we're just going to stick a little bit of paint on it. I think the closest paint we've got is like S15 Sylvia White. I don't think you're really going to see anything down there by the time there's an engine in there anyway, but white's going to look better than brown. So
Brown rust.
we're going to give that a coat,
So you grind it off as best you can. Apply the anti-oxidizing stuff.
which you rub in with a scourer so it can like bite into it.
Before it dries, you wipe it with a wet rag and follow it with a dry rag, and then once that flashes off, you prime it and then paint it. This is not as exciting stuff, but it's important that it's done, otherwise it's just a time bomb. You know, rust never
Exactly.
sleeps, as they say.
Also, considering it is like right in front of us, now is the easiest time to have a go at this. So now is the time we're doing it.
All right, paint.
While we're cleaning up the rust, Al is removing the factory accelerator pedal, which we'll be replacing later with some newer technology. With the surface rust now treated, we're spraying on some primer. Eventually this engine bay will get a full paint job, but until then we're going to clean it up and treat it as best we can.
Our next job is to start removing things from the engine that we no longer need, and there is a lot of stuff that's about to go in the bin.
So Al, we're going to be making some epic 80s power with this RB, but along with the epic 80s power, we have some epic 80s engine management. Can you run me through some of the brilliance that was the 80s and why we're removing it?
Yeah, so this system was a Japanese engine management system, but it's based on Bosch LH, which is an 80s design of engine management. So there's a lot of add-ons and stuff. This
Like this guy that I just took off.
yeah, so we're taking all this stuff off because we're going to modernise it into something that isn't old and crap. So for idle control, it's got this basically that's an air leak valve. When it's cold, it opens up and leaks air around the throttles. Then when it gets hot, it shuts off and it doesn't anymore. So it's pretty high tech. It's also got this, which is an idle control valve operated by the ECU. This one doesn't actually have sometimes they have an extra one on the side of them that clicks open when you turn the air conditioning on, so it's like super high tech. So you got all these valves clicking open and shut to try and keep the idle working instead of having it actually operated by an ECU properly.
Yep.
So we're going to throw all this stuff away, and as you can see, the Nissan bracket company has been going hard. Not a fan of them.
We also have down here, this is a water-cooled oil cooler.
Yeah, so it's a heat transfer. Basically transfers oil temperature heat into the cooling system.
And then coolant is running through here. So basically this is adding extra load onto the radiator
so
system.
It cools the oil, but to do that, you've got to use the radiator to cool it. So it's you kind of... It works, but it's not the greatest idea.
So we potentially go full JDM and do like a separate oil cooler, yeah?
It's better because you then got two radiators and they're both cooling rather than just transferring heat around the place, which is what it does at the moment. Also, we're getting these magical 6 throttles that are sort of a bit of a feature of the GDR. They basically don't do anything special. We're going to get rid of them.
So these are individual throttle bodies, right? And we're just replacing them with one almighty one.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is just replace it with an e-throttle, and the e-throttle does everything. The computer just controls it. It does idle, does the works. You don't need any of this stuff anymore. It all goes in the bin, all these hoses and pipes and leak valves and transfer things. And that little thing there is like a little plenum because it's got 6 throttles. So you don't get a good... to distribute the air that's leaked around the throttles, it's got to go through this and then go through this big bridge here, and then there's 6 little leak ports.
That's like full David Bowie labyrinth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
Basically, they just started off and just couldn't stop. The benefit of what we're doing versus the benefit that doesn't even have because it's not even used. It's kind of like it's a Group A thing, so they have to put everything on there that they want on the race car, but then it just doesn't get used in the road version.
Yeah,
so
right.
We don't need it, so we'll take it off.
One of the things that adds to the complexity of this engine conversion is the diff that's cast into the RB26 sump. We're not going all-wheel drive, so this part needs to go.
Well, this is what makes a GDR really. They've built this elaborate sump setup for it, made out of cast aluminium with a diff cast into the sump itself.
Yeah.
So your front tail shaft comes in here, off the transfer case on the GDR, and then there's 2 axles are here and here. There's a shaft that goes through the middle there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like one of the big things about the GDR at the time is that it was a 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
It was probably a pretty big deal back in the day, back in the late 80s. I was trying to think of what else would have had something like this, and I think the only thing I can think of was BMW had an E30 that was all-wheel drive, but
Okay.
it might have been, I don't know whether it was before or after this was done, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was certainly a bit of engineering, that's for sure, especially for, you know, a production vehicle. Of course, stage years, and also there was also 2-litre four-wheel drive, just sort of like a base model four-wheel drive R32 as well. It didn't have an RB26 in it.
Yep.
So it was it's a fairly mass-produced bit of gear.
Does it make it like a much harder thing to service because it's like connected to the engine? You need to like, because you can't just change it. You know?
Everything about GTRs is hard to
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, complicated design equals difficult to work on generally.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, they have their moments. You don't buy one and expect it to be trouble-free and easy, that's for sure.
This is ready to crack, man. Let's get it going. Right. Oh, I can hear it.
It's a good sound. It means you undid all the bolts generally.
Oh,
All that.
there we go.
With the factory sump and front diff gone, now we can start the epic task of relocating the oil pickup and modifying the RD sump to fit our RB engine. Next time on Mighty Car Mods, our gearbox arrives. We start making mounts that are going to hold the whole thing together and our engine gets some love.